My friends, worry is perhaps one of the most common problems in the human race. It's really a universal tendency that cuts across every human boundary. Young, old, rich, poor. To some extent, every one of us is a worrier. Now, that is understandable. Let's face it, we live in a dangerous and uncertain world. Bad things happen to good people with no sense of prediction. But at the same time, we need to know that worry is potentially dangerous, and it can be a deadly enemy. At best, it wastes energy. It undermines happiness. It paralyzes efforts, and it reduces our productivity. Our word worry comes from the old English word reigen, which means to strangle. And that really is an accurate description of what worry is at its worst. It literally has the power to strangle us, to strangle our health, and to even destroy life itself. Once we recognize worry for what it is, then we need to take some practical steps to overcome it. And that really is the subject of today's gospel story. Here in a few brief, well-chosen sentences, Jesus talked to his followers about the problem of worry. I believe that if you and I take his words to heart and put them to work in practice, we can overcome worry instead of being overcome by it. I think the first thing we need to do is remind ourselves that we are always in the presence and the providence of God. So many things that affect our lives are really out of our control. We cannot control or react to certain things, but we cannot even control events themselves. Those first followers of Jesus were faced with similar doubts and difficulties. Jesus reminded them that they were overlooking the all-important fact about God's presence and providence. To illustrate this point, he directed their attention to the birds of the heaven, whom God feeds, and the wild flowers which God dresses in regal splendor. And then he said, "Will not God provide much more for you, his chosen ones?" The next thing we need to remind ourselves is the futility and fruitlessness of worry itself. Now, Jesus puts this very question to his disciples. Which of you, by worrying, can add a single moment to your lifespan? Well, the answer to that question is obvious. Worry does not increase the quality or the length of our human life. If anything, it decreases it. The plain truth is that worry produces nothing. Absolutely nothing. There's one other thing that we need to do in our battle with worry, and that is to train ourselves to really live life one day at a time. Now, Jesus ended his lesson with these words, "Enough then of worrying about tomorrow. Let tomorrow take care of itself. Today has troubles of its own." Now, we should all be wise enough to use the gift of foresight which God has given us. But we should not make the mistake of trying to carry tomorrow's burdens today. Many, if not most of the things that you and I worry about actually never happen. Imaginary problems are more difficult to solve than real problems. You see, no one is strong enough to carry today's real burdens and tomorrow's imaginary burdens at the same time. One day at a time, that's a good philosophy to live life by. What a difference it would make in our lives if we could learn these very simple lessons of Jesus. Remember that God is always with us. Don't fret over things over which we have no control, and live life one day at a time. We might not completely solve the problem of worry, but at least we can handle it instead of allowing worry to handle us.